All right, let's get this underway. I'm Jody from Agents Agency, and I'm really pleased to introduce you today to Julie Collins, who's going to be running this session for us. Julie runs Julie Collins PM Solutions and Consulting, where she works with property management businesses to turn reactive, chaotic operations into structured, high performing departments. She spent years in the industry seeing capable people and teams struggling not from a lack of effort, but from a lack of systems, clarity, and leadership. That's exactly why she started her consultancy to help PM businesses build the structure and accountability that sustainable success actually depends on. Today, Julie's speaking about something that's really important and everyone in our industry needs to understand, and that is the real cost of bad business. So I would like to hand over to Julie to share her screen and take us through this.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jody. And thank you very much, Agents Agency, for having me on board. And thank you to all of you beautiful people that have taken time out of your day to jump on here today. I, more than anyone, or as much as anyone, understand how precious our time is. There's never enough of it. It's one of our greatest enemies in property management. So taking the time out to be with us today is fantastic. And I really do believe that you will take some things away from today that are going to be very beneficial to your department. I really hope that I get those cogs turning about what's happening in your departments and, things that you can possibly, improve, implement. There may be some things in here that you're all over, but if you can walk away with something today that's going to make a difference, that's what it's all about. Jody, I've got a question for you, and it's something that's only just crossed my mind. Was the questionnaire sent out to everyone?
No, but I am going to thank you for reminding me. I've got it and I'm going to pop it in the chat.
Amazing. Okay. So let's get underway. Now I'm going to share my screen and we're all going to pray to the technology gods that everything goes well today and does exactly what we need it to do. Because being in front of, I actually, do you know, here's a fun fact. I find it much more nerve-wracking to be in front of a computer screen than what I do standing in front of a whole room full of people. Isn't that bizarre? The screen terrifies me. Doesn't terrify me, but anyway. Alrighty. So can everyone see? If anyone can't, please pop a little message in the chat or speak up because we definitely want to be sure that everyone can see what is going on. Okay. And Jody, you good to keep an eye on that chat channel for us? Is that okay?
I will, and we'll run through them at the end. So if you have any
Beautiful.
questions, just pop them in.
Love it. Okay, I'm just going to move this over here so that I can see what's going on as well. Okay, beautiful. So, as has already been said, today we're going to be talking about what is bad business and what is the cost. Now, this is something that I'm really, really passionate about because I go into a lot of offices and what I see is predominantly people working really, really hard, trying very hard to get ahead, offer great service and all those sorts of things. And then not being able to understand why it is that they can't get ahead or things are going wrong or the department feels disjointed or clunky or whatever the case may be. So we're going to drill into that what is bad business and recognizing, I'm not just talking about the stuff that shows up on financial reports. Okay. And when we talk about businesses and we talk about whether they're successful, I find a really bad thing in our industry that everyone wears like a badge of honor how many properties they manage. But can I just say to you, that actually doesn't, that is actually not the crux of it. When people say to me, I manage 500 properties, what I really want to know is, but how much money are you making and how well is your office functioning? Because often behind that number is utter chaos. Okay. So what we're going to do here today, and I love putting up this little content warning screen because what we're going to talk about today is a lot of truths, okay? And we've really got to get comfortable with getting uncomfortable, because ultimately we are digging into our businesses, and this is actually going to be, a true reflection. Can I just say to you, I'm not going to ask you to share intricate information about your business, but I just hope that you can be really true with yourself when you are considering the questions and the things that we're going to cover off on today. Okay, everyone on board with that? Hands up for those that we can see. Fantastic. All right. Oh, and now my system's decided to go on the blink. Okay, so I've got a question for everyone, and this is where we have to be very interactive online, because I'm not standing in front of you to be able to pick on you in the crowd, okay? When we think about, bad business, where do you believe bad business costs agency the most? So I want you to have a look on the screen there and tell me which of those things do you think, okay, in a bad business category is the most expensive to a business? Pop your comments in for me. Team burnout, poor culture, love it. Team burnout. Okay, team burnout's very, very popular. Keep coming in with those comments, guys. Team burnout, great. All right, like I said, keep them coming. Really, really interesting that the biggest piece there has actually been around that team burnout and that poor culture, because interestingly, that drives so many things behind the scenes. They're almost like our silent assassins, which is what I often refer to them as. Like I said, they're not the things that show up on profit and loss statements, etc. They are all those internal things that are eroding away at our businesses. So we start to talk about, what is bad business? So when I say to someone, what is bad business? Okay, again, if I'm asking you that question, what would you say to me? What does bad business look like? If I say, okay, there's bad business in this agency, what would that mean? Jump on your keyboards again for me. Properties that don't make the required dollars to sustain the management. Absolutely love that. And that is such a core piece that we are going to talk about today. Think to yourself, bad business is when no communication or follow-up with our clients. Yeah, that definitely causes a lot of issues. I've got some suggestions. Bad businesses when, do we keep a client that we should have let go? Are we undercharging? Are we tolerating poor performance in our business? Are we not following our own processes? All of these things, low fees and high dependent landlords. Yep, very much at either end of the scale and very, very damaging. So when we consider, okay, that we've got bad business going on in our agencies, in our businesses, who decides? Who decides that we're operating bad business? Who do you think decides that? Jump on your keyboards again for me. Have a think about that. Who gets to decide that that's a bad business? We all do. Everyone contributes. The property manager. Yeah, absolutely. All correct answers. Management decides, but it should be the staff. Yeah. Keep putting these answers in, guys. This is all this stuff that actually gets those cogs turning and thinking about when we're drilling in to our business. Who decides what is bad business? Can I just say, what about our clients? Do they get to make a determination that it's bad business? Absolutely, they do. The general public, they hear things, they might read things on social media, not necessarily saying it's true, but when these things start to take effect, okay, this is what happens. Other people get to decide. Yep, Justine, thank you. Clients and past clients, absolutely. Okay. So then we have to ask ourselves, okay, what is the real cost? Okay, when we've got these things going on and it's bad business, what is the real cost? And we've already touched on some of that already. The real cost is that we lose staff, we lose clients, our reputation is damaged, isn't it? All of these things, okay? If we were to think about the way that solicitors charge in their businesses, they charge in billable hours, okay? So if we've got bad business going on and we were to actually, put a time study in place and what we're worth an hour, what would it look like if we actually were able to put it down onto a financial report? It's quite frightful when we think about the time that is spent on retraining people because we've lost good staff, perhaps on someone's put there, I would be a billionaire. Absolutely, Jody. Then we think about, those things that we have to go back and over the top of them and fix mistakes and all of those sorts of things. What are all them sorts of things costing our business? But as I mentioned, okay, it doesn't always, bad business is not always dramatic and it doesn't always show up on a report. There are so many other ways in which it presents itself that we need to have awareness in our business. So when we look at that iceberg scenario, and we look at the things that are very visible on the top, but let's look at the things that are happening underneath the surface, okay? And that is all the things that actually feed into this. We've got unclear expectations. If we're not making those expectations clear, okay, in our business, how can we expect our team to actually perform at a high level? Leadership avoidance. If no one is steering the ship, it's a rudderless ship, or as they say, the fish rots from the head down. Burnout. That's what starts to sink in with our team. Okay, our team are not only performing at their best, but things like resentment start to fit in, and people actually don't want to perform at their best. And the financial misalignment, well, we don't need to drill into that too hard. We all know exactly where that goes to. Okay, but the thing is, these are the things that actually sit below the waterline, the things that are happening internally, but they majorly affect what sits above the waterline. Okay, and they're the things that we've been talking about already: loss managements, complaints, staff turnover, and reputational damage. All of these things represent bad business and they all cost us in one way or another. Okay. Here's the other thing to consider. When you look at those things on that screen now that we've just covered off on, the problem is that often when all this is going on, we actually start to normalise it. We actually start to convince ourselves that this is just normal. Property management's a tough gig. It comes with chaos. Being busy, etc. That's just all part of it. But we have to ask ourselves, is it really? Or do we just normalise that? And then these are the things that actually start to become very expensive in our business and ultimately do cost us. Now, Jody's actually going to pop in for you a worksheet. Okay, that's going to come
In the
up
chat.
in the
Yeah.
chat.
I'll repost it in case anyone didn't grab it from the top.
Beautiful. Okay, if everyone can see that, and I hope that you are all able to access it, because I'd actually like to take the time now. I really want you to go through that worksheet. There's a whole series there of questions asking you to think about your business, what's happening in your business, leadership, and all sorts of things so that we can do a department check-in. Okay, is there anyone that hasn't been able to open that or is not able to work on that form? Just pop a message in the chat for us if you're having any difficulty with that.
Like we're all good, Jules.
All good? Fantastic. All right, let's start working away on that so that we can actually give ourselves a department check-in score and then we can actually unpack that. Okay, while we're working through this, again, I talked right at the beginning about being really, really truthful with yourself. Again, this is not stuff that you're going to have to share with anyone else. Okay, this is actually your moment of truth. This is for you to really dig into what's going on in your department. Okay, and at the end of the day, whatever the score is, it's not there for judgment. It's actually to give you, I guess, some guidance and give you some focus points that perhaps you can work on because it's actually a starting point for your prioritization. Because I can't see you all, or you're not in front of me, what I'm going to get you to do is, as we get to the point where you've pretty well finished up on that, I'll just get you to pop in the chat, or turn your microphones on and just let us know that you're good to go. Usually takes about 5 minutes. And see everyone very diligently working through that. Concentrating going on, I can see. Jody, love your comment in here when I was chatting before, about the things that represent bad business. A referral from a sales agent because they will get a commission and we should put up with it. And we're not going to bang up on the sales team in our session today, but there is real truth and real relevance to that because there's that real misalignment or perhaps misunderstanding that it's the whole bad business cost, isn't it? I you know, often do
I've
have a
got a
bit of a.
little way to put it back to them and then allow them to work out whether we should still do it.
I
So
love that. I'd love you to share that.
I say, okay, well, if I take this on and I tally all of the effort and whatever we're going to do and put into this, and then I show you what we were paid in the management fee, are you willing to top up the rental department from your sales commission for that lost turnover? And generally the answer is no, because there's not much commission left.
I love that. I love that. That concept is exactly correct. And it's not because they don't care about the PM department. It's just that they just don't have that
They don't
understanding.
understand.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right, of all the things that go on behind the scenes. And, I often do say to teams when it is staying in, sort of in the same department as such, and they think, but it's going to be okay because of the sales commission we're going to get. Just that if you do that time and financial study, you actually might find that even your sales commission is actually not even, you're still not coming out in front. So it's just having that
Yeah.
awareness, isn't it? So Yeah, love that analogy. And there's a great one for all the PMs to take away if they're challenging with their sales team over whether a property should come on board and whether in our PM department we should be babysitting it until it's ready to be sold. So, how are we going with those forms? Is anyone that's still going? Don't be afraid to speak up. You still need a little bit more time. I'm going to make sure that we get through all of our session today. Is everyone good to go if we start moving forward? Maybe it's hard when you're not sitting in front of people. I can't determine what they're doing.
All
That's
right, so
okay.
I'm done, Maria's done, Nadine's
Beautiful.
done, Jess is
Jessica's
done.
done. All right, we're
Grace
probably
is
getting
done.
pretty close. So you can certainly keep working on them afterwards. Someone's in the car. That's absolutely fine. Not a problem at all. So let's keep moving forward and pardon me. Let's start to unpack this. Now, not all of you are finished, but if there is anyone that has told me that they got a score over 110, I'd be really, really concerned because that's actually not possible. So that would tell me that you're actually not being truthful to yourself. So whatever your score may be, let's have a look at, just in a brief summary, what some of these scores can actually identify. So if we have a look at 90 to 110. As it suggests here, strong and stable. You've probably got some really good systems and workflows already in place. You understand your team actually understands how to operate and they know what's expected of them. And perhaps your focus could be on some refinement. As we know, there's always, new ways coming out and new automations and new technology. So it's always good to just keep refining. As I say, if we're standing still, we're going backwards. So that's always good to keep on top of. 70 to 89, we're functional, but we're inconsistent. So perhaps things are working fairly well, but there is some inconsistency that can come back down to perhaps there is a little bit of a lack of accountability or things not being followed through when it comes to our process, etc. And our focus perhaps needs to be that we're going to tighten things up. Let's look at 50 to 69. These are our departments that probably do need some attention. There probably are some structural gaps there when it comes to your processes and procedures. Perhaps it even drills into performance and morale with the team. These sometimes tend to be those teams where perhaps people are doing it their own way, or everything lives inside of someone's head. That can certainly be a very big problem. And if we are below 50, not all is lost. It just means that there's some work to do and really need to start thinking about how can we get that structure and clarity in our teams and not relying on just one individual of knowing how to do everything, etc., and building out, those systems, processes, workflows in our business to get that stabilization and that structure. So all this information, all these slides can be shared with you afterwards. So if you haven't finished your sheet, it's okay. And of course, you're going to have these things to come back to. But one thing that is really good, to ask everyone, and that is as you were going through that list, if there was, particular questions in there that you really hesitated on and you really weren't sure, can I just say to you, gosh, I'm having trouble getting this to go. Can I just say to you that often where you've hesitated, that is actually where those hidden things are, because you're not 100% sure. Well, that means that it actually does need some attention. So that's a really good thing to think about. Okay. And really, really quickly, I actually want to move forward to having a think about a personal check-in for yourself. Okay. And rate yourself with where you think you are sitting, from an operational perspective, a leadership perspective, and a strategic perspective. And you can kind of tie that into that whole questionnaire that we've just done. And this is for no other reason, basically, then to, be able to reflect on yourself and go, okay, there's probably some areas that I need to work on as well. Because if we're going to drive these businesses forward and the teams that we work with, okay, we've got to be able to make sure that we actually have all of these things, that we're feeling as though we're very competent and confident in these areas so we can actually pass it on to our team. Because if we're lacking, well, they're not going to forge ahead either. Okay. Interestingly, when you think about this personally, would love you to share. Don't have to if you don't feel uncomfortable, but I would actually love to know, okay, which one in here actually made you feel the most uncomfortable thinking about it? Where do you think that is your weak spot that you need to work on the most? Would love you to drop some comments in the chat there. The thing I love about this is I guarantee that there are people within your organization that they have superpowers in the areas that you don't. So if you see, someone in there that perhaps feels there's an area that they'd love to work on, and you feel that perhaps you could give them some tips in that area, that's why networks like this work so fabulously. Have we had anyone that's been brave? Have we had anyone, Jody, that's dropped in? Or Jody has leadership,
I
always
did
trying to
because I
upskill?
thought I better
Yep,
lead by example.
yep, yep. We're always improving. Does anyone else want to share if there's anything that they feel they'd like to improve on or upskill? So don't want to put anyone on the spot, but if you'd like to share, that would be fantastic. All right, let's keep moving. Okay, so now what I want to look at is, thank you, Maria, operational. Now what I want to move forward with is, okay, let's start to look at this bad business that we're talking about, and let's put it into pillars. And we are going to move into this operational, leadership, and strategic, which are the pillars that I actually just asked you to reflect on yourself. Okay, so operational. Okay, when we talk about bad business, what are some of the things from an operational perspective? Okay, that actually do, pardon me, hold us back. We've got that no documented processes and workflows. This is something that I do. It's probably one of the most predominant things that I do see in businesses that I go into. Okay. And that is that we've either got people doing their own thing. Okay. Or perhaps they've brought along how they used to do it from the place that they came from before. Or we're all just giving it a red hot crack and hoping that it all turns out. And in my experience, winging it in property management really doesn't work very well at all. Inconsistent onboarding, that's a really big piece in that operational piece. I think there's been a lot more emphasis on this, over the last few years on how people are onboarded. I have been in this industry for, a little while. I often say since dinosaurs roamed the earth, I'm going into my 39th year. And I remember way back then, you basically turn up, you'd be given a desk and a business card, which actually made you, you were the corporate leader of property management. You had it all going on because when you're given a business card, you've made it, right? That's how it works. Well, that's how it used to work. Not so much anymore. Actually, some people don't even have business cards anymore. But all jokes aside, if in our businesses, if our operational piece with onboarding or inconsistently onboarding people, that is where you lay the foundations. Think of building a house. Foundations come first, and if they're faulty, everything on top of that cracks, moves, and eventually falls over. Well, onboarding our people generally is no different. Poor follow-up. Okay, so what sort of measures do we have in place, whether that's external with our clients or internal with our team? Where do we close that loop? Where does it constantly come back? Reactive instead of proactive. I think we've all heard this saying over and over and over again in property management, but unfortunately, it is something that plagues us constantly. So, what are we doing as far as those proactive measures? And I mentioned before about things living in someone's head. So, if we now relate this to a dollar factor and what does it cost us? Okay, it costs us time leakage. It costs us having to rework things and fix errors. Who loves doing that? Nobody ever. Exactly. The time that it takes is phenomenal. Tribunal exposure, obviously, that's something that we become, prevalent to if there are errors and mistakes, and it lands us in tribunals. Okay, and team overwhelm. Okay, it's not sustainable to be running at this high frequency of just chaos all the time. While sometimes, all those, endorphins and all those things kick in that, make us dig in and get it done. To run at that frequency constantly, it is just not sustainable. Okay, so at the end of the day, we need every process is experienced by a person. So if those processes aren't right, what does that experience look like, whether it's our internal team or whether it's our external people, which are our clients? Every system sends a message. If we've got really good systems in place, what is the message that it sends? The message is, this is how we do things around here. And our team becomes conducive to that because they know this is how we do it. Okay. But our clients get to know. Okay, this is how it works in that agency. They're the people that they either talk really well about us at the barbecue on a Saturday night or they talk really poorly about us. Yeah. I often think, I often talk about McDonald's and I say, think about McDonald's. It is a global organization that is essentially run by teenagers. That's a frightful thought, but that is technically pretty much how it all works. How does that happen? It happens because they've got really tight procedures and they've got, everything's in place. The onboarding's correct. Everyone in that place knows what they need to do and in what time frame it's expected to be done. And if someone has worked at Hungry Jack's previously, they don't get to come to McDonald's and say, well, I'm going to do it this way because that's how I used to do it at my old workplace. It doesn't work that way. Or I used to often have a joke with my team and say, no one gets to come to work today at McDonald's and decide they're going to put beetroot on the fillet of fish. These things just, it's not how it works. So why do we allow that in our departments where, things are done that are outside the realm of that's not how we do things around here? Okay. Every standard teaches people what actually matters. So we constantly have to ask ourselves, when we don't get this right, what is the price tag? Okay. Let's look at leadership. When we look at our examples of our bad business, we've got avoiding difficult conversations. Okay. We've got tolerating low standards. One of the most expensive things in a business is tolerating low standards because your good people will not stick around. Okay. KPIs without clarity. What is it that we actually are working for? What are the key performance indicators that we're all wanting to achieve that make this business perform at its best? No accountability, okay? And burnout is ignored. So ultimately, what happens is that people in this business feel like there are no standards. It actually doesn't matter whether or not, you do what you're meant to do, because at the end of the day, nobody's taking notice. No one's keeping score. No one's keeping anyone accountable. Has anyone ever worked in a business like that? Show of hands for those that have got their cameras on. You ever work somewhere where there's no accountability and it just feels like people behave badly and no one really does anything about it? And it's not a good feeling. Ultimately, it's not a place where anyone wants to work, and people do leave. That's what happens. Because the cost of that is culture erosion, silent resentment. That's what kicks in. It's that resentment piece where people become very resentful. Well, why should I care? Nobody else does. Why should I worry about doing it properly when no one else is going to? Nobody cares if it's not done properly, so why do I bother? And ultimately, we end up with staff turnover. So when we asked before about, where do you find yourself and what are your scores if you're sitting in a leadership position, which I think everyone does to some degree, irrespective of what your role title is, you have to ask yourself, when you look at all of those things, how do they resonate with you? So when leaders hide behind a process, okay, people feel it. If it's just a case of, oh no, we've got a process for that, but no one's actually following it through, etc., what is the point? When leaders avoid conversations, people pay the price, not just the people that are directly involved, but the people that are indirectly involved as well if those conversations are not had. Okay. And when leaders tolerate bad behavior, culture rots. That is inevitable. That is what happens. So, again, when we consider all of this, how do you put a price tag on this? What does this cost the business? Okay. Let's go into strategic, okay, and look at our bad business. And this is where we start to move into those most obvious things, a little bit of money stuff going on here, okay? Strategic bad business, undercharging, okay, but over servicing. And those things often do bookend each other, which is a really, really toxic combination. No fee increases for years. Now, some of you in here may be in the early stages of your business. Perhaps some of you have had your businesses operating longer. And I do ask you the question, and that is, when was the last time you actually reviewed your fees, okay, and done any increases? Maybe it's because they just haven't been done. Maybe it's because you're too frightened to do them and you think that people are going to, your clients are going to leave. I'm not sure. And this is not a session to drill into that. Okay. But that is something that absolutely should happen. Don't just rely on rent increases to be your automated fee increase system because it's actually not viable. Okay. No profit analysis, no future planning, and no evaluation processes. Again, that's that loop back. What are you monitoring? How are you tracking your numbers? And we are going to move more into numbers as we get further into this session today. But the outcomes or the cost of all of this is profit bleed, stagnation. When we've got these businesses that we feel like we're working really, really hard and we're not moving forward. We talked about that right back at the beginning, didn't we? But I'm so busy and I'm working so hard, but I feel like I'm not getting anywhere. Business fragility and reputational damage. Okay, all the things that are all factor into those costs. Because here's the thing, when we talk about business, and nearly everyone we talk to, everyone says, I'm so busy. And can I just say to you, busy is not a business model. Just because you're busy, it doesn't mean that you're running a great business or a profitable business or whatever the case may be. Just excuse me one moment. There's a lot more to it than that. Okay. Undercharging is not generosity. Why would we do that to ourselves? We're providing a professional service, okay, and it's a professional service that we deserve to be paid accordingly. And profit is not a dirty word. It's almost like we've been programmed, and obviously there's, now we're trying to undo that, whereby it's expected, okay, that we should actually be providing our services under discounted models, etc. Why? Why are we doing that to ourselves? Okay. And in all of that, you have to ask yourself, what is the price tag? I have no doubt if we were to do a financial study on our businesses, and if we have fallen into this trap of discounting and, generous models where we're offering fee-free periods and, all of these sorts of things, if we actually put that down on paper and what that equates to in money, it actually probably would land, a lot heavier than what we realize. Certainly something to think about. So let's shift from money to impact, because all of these things cost us money. We know that, okay? But we have to get these elimination frameworks in place so that we all these other things that are, like I said, eroding at our business. How do we eliminate them? Okay, so when it comes to, tolerating bad business or bad behaviors, etc., we need to raise and uphold our standards. Okay, we need to make sure that if this is what our businesses are about, that we uphold that. There's an old saying here that what you walk past, you accept. So if you're in a workplace or you're running or operating your own business and there's bad behaviors going on, okay? If we walk past it, that means that you're accepting it, you're enabling it, okay? And the lowest level you accept is the highest level you can expect. And I really want you all to repeat that to yourself. The lowest level you accept is the highest level you can accept. Now, I think often we think about that and we immediately go to the team or people that we work with, but that is very relevant to the clients that we work with as well. When you think about that, we've got clients that are behaving poorly and it's a real struggle and they don't want to meet, repairs and maintenance obligations or minimum standards if they're relevant in your state and all of those sorts of things. And it's a fight to get any of this stuff across the line. You've got to turn yourself inside out, etc. Why do we accept that kind of behavior? So just have a little think about that when it comes to eliminating, okay, and tolerance. Eliminate chaos through structure. Okay, have we got systems and processes and workflows? Are we onboarding people with clarity? Okay, are things defined? People know what their roles are. Do we have an organizational chart? So everybody else knows what everybody else does as well. It's nothing worse than a department where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Okay, again, all of these things creep into the costs of bad business. Eliminate undervaluing your services. And I'm a massive advocate for this. I could honestly talk about it all day because it drives me insane that we have allowed in our industry or enable this whole idea of, basically being undervalued and not putting a price tag on ourselves that we are worthy of. Okay, so do we have a clear service scope? This is what we do, and this is what we charge for it, and this is why we charge this amount. Don't be afraid to say why we do this. Okay, we've all heard that saying, property managers just collect the rent. Okay, is there anyone else that's ever heard people say that? Have you ever seen it pop up on social media forums, or you've actually seen it, you've heard it discussed in conversations? Yeah, is there anyone that's never heard that? Surely we've all heard that at some time. Okay, how does that make you feel when people say that? Property managers just collect the rent. Are you like me? Does it actually make you just feel like almost makes your blood boil because like, they've got no idea what we do? But maybe that's our fault because maybe we actually haven't made it really, really clear, okay, with a clear services scope of what we actually do. Sometimes we forget to take our clients on the journey. So it's actually our fault that they don't have a full understanding of what we do. Certainly another way to think about it, okay? Are our fees aligned with our value? Okay, why are we undercharging? Why are we offering freebies? Why are we doing things, that we outside of our services scope? The amount of property managers I hear of, that go into a property and they end up cleaning it because they've got to get it ready for the tenant to go in or whatever the case may be. We're not cleaners, we're property managers, you know. People taking photos of themselves because they're weeding a garden while they're at a property. Why are we doing that? Is that because we've got nothing else to do because we've got way too much spare time on our hands? I'm going to suggest probably not. Okay. Understanding the financial viability in our businesses, and this is a really big thing and quite a big piece that is often lost in so many of our businesses. Okay. And this is what we're actually going to start moving into because this screen that I've got up here, it is a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing, but I often do say quite often in our rent rolls, we actually have a proportion. I certainly hope it's not all of it, but we actually have a proportion of some of these properties that we manage where we are operating not-for-profit businesses and we actually don't even realise it. Is that frightful to actually hear that? Okay, who here wants to operate a not-for-profit organisation in their business? Who wants to work for free? Nobody. Of course we don't. That's not what we're here for. Okay. So this boils into what I often talk about, and that is knowing your numbers. Okay. So let's look at some industry benchmarks. Okay. Once upon a time, the industry benchmark was always around this 33%, 33%, 33%. It was considered that that's how it was broken down. 33% operational costs, 33% wages, 33% profit. Now, I think it'd be really fair to say that we've moved away from that quite a lot over time because what's actually happened is fee structures have started dwindling, okay? But tell me, have business costs gone down with that? Has anyone here had their business costs reduced drastically lately? By all means, share it with us in the chat. We're very happy to hear about it, okay? But of course, we all know that the answer is no. Okay, Nadine, that's why we documented what our fees include with our fee structure. Love that. Don't just give it a title. People don't know what that title means. Okay, tell them what we're actually doing for that money. Okay, so getting back to our benchmarks. So then we've seen this little bit of a shift in things and we've seen the cost of, generally it's those operational costs and those particularly wages, okay, they have gone up. So perhaps it's fair to say that we've moved and shifted into 30 to 35% operational, about 40% in wages, only 25 to 30% in profit. But then things have shifted again, and all of a sudden we've had these blowouts, and we are seeing in some agencies where we've got this, 65% is being gobbled up just in wages, okay? Because every time we've got a problem in a business, unfortunately, or things are not operating well, people think that the way to fix it is to throw another person in there, throw another person in to fix it, rather than really drilling into a lot of these things that we've talked about today. So if we've got 30 to 35% going out in operational costs and we've got 65% going out in wages, okay, that's going to leave us with zero profit. Okay, and that is a problem. Would you agree? Yeah, absolutely it is. Okay. So, and this comes down to knowing our numbers. So, we often talk about the double AMI, which is the annual average management income. And a lot of people actually know that. Well, I would like to think that you do know what is your average income on your properties, which is great. Okay. But the other end of that is you actually need to know how much it costs you to manage a property. Because I often ask this question, I'm going to put this out here to you now, and if you can jump on and pop a comment in, that would be great. Okay. If you're actually operating your own business, or like I said, working within a business, when it comes to your fee structures, how did you decide what you were going to charge? How was it decided we're going to charge this much for a management fee and this much for a letting fee and whatever the other charges is that we put in place? How do we decide that? Now, like I said, love you to jump in, of course, and pop some comments in the chat. But I can say the most common response that I get to that is because we look at what everyone else around us is charging and we follow suit because it's kind of just become this, well, that's what everyone does, so that's what we keep doing. But again, it's a very flawed model because that model basically is based on percentage. Okay, would that be fair to say? In our area, people charge 7%, or in our area, people charge 5%, etc. Okay. Some people decide they're going to charge 4% because everyone else charges 5%, whatever the case may be. But it's really, really flawed when all the focus is just based around this number and it's this percentage, because it actually leads to such a broad scope. And often what happens is that we're actually not even covering our costs. Like I said, we're coming back to that not for profit. Okay. And I come back to if you don't know how much it costs you, average area won't take on business unless it makes a certain amount of management fees to lead the rent profitability. Love hearing that. If you don't know how much it costs you to manage a property, how do you know how much to charge? Because at the end of the day, you could charge 15% management fees, but that doesn't necessarily mean, again, that you are actually making a profit because it comes down to whatever the return is on the property, as in the rent return, because obviously that's what the percentage drives from, and how much it's costing you. So we need to work this out. Because if I decided to open a shoe shop and I decided to pluck a magic number and I'm going to sell my shoes for $25 a pair because I feel like that's a really good number and lots of people would buy my shoes at that number, and off I go. Okay, and I open my shoe shop and I'm selling lots and lots of pairs of shoes. As a matter of fact, I'm selling so many pairs that I actually need to hire someone to come in and work with me. So we're selling more and more and more, but I can't work out why I'm not making any money. Well, the reason is because I actually haven't done my numbers. I don't know my numbers. And as it turns out, with buying my shoes and all of my running costs, etc., it's actually costing me $35 per pair of shoes. So I'm going backwards. Okay, is this resonating? Is everyone sort of still on track with me here? Yeah. So what I say to you is you need to know how much does it cost you to manage a property. So I'm going to ask you, do you know, okay, do you know how much it costs you to manage a property, one property on an annual basis? Do you know what the cost to your business is to manage a property? Jody, yes, great, love that. Would love it. Anyone that doesn't know, by all means, be honest, jump in there and say no. Like I said, no judgment here. I'm really curious to know, does everyone here know how much it costs them to manage a property in their business? Okay, well, if you don't, okay, we're going to go on further and I really want to help you with this, okay? I actually do have a working kit, I suppose. Jody, I'm happy to share that with you so you can actually share that out with anyone that's come along today because that's actually going to help you work this out. Now, if you are starting from fresh and you only have a very small number of properties, this can be a little bit hard to do. So what I would recommend to those people is that you actually think about if you had 100 properties in your rent roll, okay? Because that's going to give you a much clearer understanding. Alrighty, so as you can see on this screen here, the first thing is we need to know, okay, what are all the expenses that we have? Okay, and we've got business operating expenses, we've got wages, we've got insurances, electricity bills to turn the lights on, whatever the case may be, all the things that it costs us to run a business. Okay, and then this is how we find out what I call our water level. Think of a swimming pool and think of a skimmer box where the water goes in and it drives the filter. We all know that if the water level drops below the skimmer box, what happens? The filter blows up. So essentially, if we keep dropping below our water level in our business, we're going to blow up our departments and we don't want that to happen. Okay. All righty. So what we do is we look at basically what does it cost to operate our business? Look at how many properties we are managing. Okay. Divide that and then add 50% again if we are wanting to get to that 33%, 33%, 33% model. So my example I've got here for you is really clear. And like I said, I've actually got a great little sort of workable kit that I can get through to Jody and the team so they can share it with you to do this exercise in your business. So let's pretend that we've got a rent roll of 200 properties. Okay, these are very hypothetical figures that have made it really easy to do the maths. Okay, and we've worked out that annually it costs us $300,000 to operate our business. Okay, so if I take that 300,000 and I divide it by 200, okay, that gives me 1,500. So I know that is my water level. That's my break-even point. Okay, so my water level's not dropping below the skimmer box. But then I want to make some profit. And if I want to work on that, like I said, 33% model, okay, I'm going to add 50%, which is 750. That means for each property, I want to be making sure that I've got $2,250 coming in annually. And that's actually going to give me my operational costs, my wages and my staff, and then there's actually money left over at the end for me. Okay. Now, is there anyone that's got any questions about that before I move forward, or would you like me to go over that again, or are we all good to keep going on? Yeah, everyone's good? Fantastic. Everyone's nodding. Because I'm actually going to run a couple of scenarios by you. Okay, I want you to consider this. All righty. Based on those facts and figures we just done, okay, if I will start at the bottom first, I've got 75 properties on my rent roll. So we're going to come all the way back now because I've worked out my figures and I've kicked off my business. I've bought on 75 properties. I've made sure that I hit this annual income that I want to achieve for them, okay, which is this amount here. And it gives me an income of 168,750 off my management fees, etc. Okay, but up the top here, if I manage 150 properties and I'm charging a reduced fee structure and I'm only bringing in 1,125 per property, okay, 168,750. So what this shows us here is this top figure, would it be fair to say that I'm working twice as hard for the same result? Yeah, absolutely it is. But in actual fact, this one here at the top is quite likely costing me even more. It's actually not same. Because if I've got more numbers, there's every chance that perhaps I need one extra person in the business. So I'm actually going to have more wages. I'm going to have higher running costs. Maybe I need, an extra workspace in my office. Maybe there's an extra vehicle I'm now paying for. Maybe I've now had to tip over into another tier with all the subscriptions I pay for, etc. So this number here, okay, from 150 properties would actually be even less financially viable. And this is where people really come unstuck. Like I said, when they're considering taking on these new properties, we become so fixated in growing our rent rolls based on numbers and how many properties we're managing. And don't misunderstand me. I know I've grown a rent roll from zero, so I know you're working so hard and you really want to get those numbers up. Okay, but we need to be really mindful of, but what numbers is it that we are actually focusing on? Okay, our numbers need to be these numbers. Are they financially viable properties? Or are you happy to work yourself into the ground for no reward? I certainly know that I'm not. I learned certainly learned this a long time ago. And like I said, then you've got the hidden cost of bad business, because what often happens is if we are working on this 150 property model, okay, we're trying to cut expenses because we now got to work on a bulk model, which means that often we have to overload portfolios with our property managers because we need more properties managed because we've got less income. Okay, people are under the pump, team burnout, staff turnover, and so it keeps going on. And I truly, truly believe this is a lot of what's going on in our industry right now. This whole burnout piece, etc., is because people are incredibly overloaded, but a lot of businesses are under such financial pressure because they don't have these numbers right, but they've got no option other than to operate in these bulk models. I think that's a lot of what's going on. So for anyone that has a current business, it might be time to review all of that. You're currently building your business. You are sitting in a great position because you get to build it correctly. Okay. Alrighty. Little quote that I have here: your team deserves better than burnout, and your deserves better than bad business. And I have no doubt that there's no one here today that wouldn't agree with that. So very quickly, before we finish up today, a lot of people will say, but what about the properties that I've already got on my rent roll? Because, full disclaimer, I am not saying to you to go back to your office and go through your properties and work out what's not financial and sack them all. That's not what I'm saying at all. Please don't do that. Okay. But what I would like to encourage you to do, again, this is another little thing I come up with quite some time ago, and that is to be able to do a little bit of an analysis on your rent roll. Okay. And this is the property scorecard. Go through and actually score the properties that you currently have on your rent roll um, based on the quality of them, the fees, okay, quality of the property, the fees being achieved, and the quality of the client, because all of those three pillars, okay, that is actually what makes up whether it is good business. Not just about getting great fees. We might be getting amazing fees, but they are the worst client to deal with, okay? And that actually doesn't make it good business, does it? Not at all, okay? So what you can do here is you can go through your list and go, okay, I'm actually going to categorize them. Okay, do I deem them to be an A, B, or a C in all of these categories? And I've actually given you some sort of benchmarks here as far as what would make them an A, what would make them a B, what would make them a C in each pillar. Okay. And then when we start analysing this scorecard, okay, this can actually be a really good summary of where you can start weighing things up. Okay. If someone is predominantly or all A's, if a property is predominantly A's, fantastic. We want them to stay on our rent roll and they're probably performing quite fine. There might be something that you want to tweak, but on the whole, they're doing pretty well. Okay, if they're mainly Bs or predominantly Bs, okay, they might be the ones that you need to do a little bit of work on. Perhaps there are some educational pieces that we need to work on with our owner because they need some boundaries. Perhaps the property needs some work done to it to bring it up to a better level. Perhaps there's some fee increases that need to be done there. If they're all Cs and predominantly Cs, and you honestly don't see that they are, a property or a client that you can actually shift the needle, I'd really, really be giving consideration as to whether, okay, they are worth having on your rent roll, because there is every chance, and this often is the case, that those particular clients or properties are actually costing you money. You probably will be finding that you're almost paying them to manage their property. Okay, it's really interesting when we start to drill into this and you run a report from your software, okay, wherever your water level is, find out what is not meeting that water level and really start to drill into what these clients are all about. The real cost of bad business is where you never build because you stay comfortable. You just keep tolerating. We talked about tolerating today, didn't we? The things that we just choose to accept, the things that we normalize, okay? These are all the things that are going to drill into that whole bad business piece. So I want you to start thinking about, from what we've talked about today, and whatever your position is within the rent roll or the portfolio that you operate or operate in, what can you design differently? Okay. What is it that you will refuse to tolerate? All right. What is it that you can automate to help? Okay. And what will you change? because this is all about change. You know that old saying, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So right now, right here, before we actually start to wrap up today, I'd really love everyone to jump on your keyboards for me, okay? And I want you to finish this sentence. Tomorrow I will. What does that look like for you? In other words, what is something you can take away from what we've talked about today and that you can implement immediately? And it doesn't have to change the world, it just needs to make a difference in your business. Try better. Nadine, I believe we're always trying. I have no doubt at all. And if you're going to try better, what's something that you think you could try and do better? I'd love you to drill into that a little bit more. What's something that you could change in that trying better that's actually going to help you do better? Jody, master the inbox. Yep, that's a beast, isn't it? Never
Yep.
ends.
I'm getting a new app today that's going to help me.
Love it. Make more prospecting calls. Love that. And I really hope that if you convert them to new business, that they're going to be bought on. Okay, thinking about all of these numbers. Kelly, value myself and look to the next two. I love that. Okay, you are all very valuable. We do a very, very valuable job. Implement what we took away today. Fantastic. Okay, Nadine, she's going to hate me after this. Tell me one thing you're going to implement. Okay, what are you going to implement first? What are you going to implement first? I'm really curious to know.
Mute, Nadine. We want to hear it.
I'm actually going to go through that last chart that you shared about the cost of the business. So go through the A, B, C's and sort of tick that off and sort of then go back and look at the bad business that we've got. And, is it better to sometimes look at letting go than holding on? Like, I'm really keen. And can we share that, Jody? Like, could you share that with us so that we can save that?
I've already started building one for Zebra.
I've actually got that. Beautiful. I've got a little like a workable kit that I've actually made that encompasses all of this. If you really do want to look at your numbers and review your portfolio, this is all in it for you so that you can actually sit down and do that little bit of an analysis and an exercise on your portfolio. Love that. And it doesn't matter if you've got 10 properties or 510. This is all relevant because it all starts with clarity. And what I can tell you is there's never been a business yet that I haven't gone in and started working with and finding that clarity. Sometimes it's mortifying to find it. Okay. But like I said, it's about being truthful with ourselves and not normalising it and go, oh yeah, but they've been with me for a long time. All the more reason to do something about it because you've been working for nothing for a long time. That's how you have to look at these things. Okay. So absolutely, we will get it out to you. Implement what we value myself more. Fantastic. Anyone else? I'd love to know what we're going to implement.
Yeah. I would like to say something. First of all, thank you, Julie. That was phenomenal. I mean, this is the second time that I've sat through it, and I was looking forward to meeting you at the next conference that we're going to meet at. But I just wanted to say thanks, Naz, for sharing that. Yes, we do have to go through all of the things that Julie just mentioned before. I think communicating with the team better for us, especially new people that join, like we just had Candice joining us just before I left for Greece. So a new person comes in, you might have systems and everything else that you've got within the company, but then you don't communicate it to the new people that start within the team very clearly. So we have to, for us, is just looking at all of that, first of all, communicating everything with every team member so they understand and we're all on the same page. I think that's our number one thing that we're going to tackle first, isn't it, AB?
I think so. I think for me, your comment around normalising hit home because I've always been of the opinion that if there is C quality, I just raise the fee a little bit and it makes me feel a little better, but we're normalising it then. So we still tolerate.
That's right. Yeah, because Arthur, it's not just about the fee. Like I said, there's three pillars to good business and three pillars to bad business. Exactly. And that's the thing. They could be paying phenomenal fees, but they might be sucking the life out of your team
Yeah.
from a
Yeah.
a culture perspective and all those sorts of things, and therefore it's actually not. And you just mentioned communication, Marie, and that just actually made me think of something, and that is if you're in a business where you've actually got a standalone BDM. When we talk about knowing our numbers, can I just say this is such an important thing actually for all
It
the
is.
team, understanding these numbers. Like I said, we become
Yes.
fixated on percentages in
Of,
this industry. Oh yeah, but we sign
yeah.
all of our properties up at 8%. So what? That means nothing if the
Yeah.
rent's only, $300 a week. I know that they probably don't even exist in Australia anymore, but you know what I'm saying. So it's actually not about that. They need to be able to do an analysis. Think about when we phone up or we inquire about taking out an insurance policy, they don't say, oh, we charge this. They want to know, what are they insuring? What's the value of the property? If it's car, have you had any accidents lately? Are you a high risk? Are you a low risk? Why don't we find
Yeah.
out more about these properties before we're very happy to hand over and go, we'll do it for 5%?
Yeah.
It's a
100%.
terrible
I agree
indictment
with
on
you.
our industry. It really is. It's
Yeah.
happened over a long time and we have to reverse it. But yeah, our team need to be aware of this too. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. And sometimes KPIs can work against this whole structure, because if you're giving KPIs to a BDM to say, I want you to build this, I need 20 properties over the next month, or I need to reach this number, then they're just going to put anything on so they can achieve their KPIs, but then they don't understand what they're doing to the rest of the team, that they have to look after these landlords for a very, very long time. So that can
100%.
be
Yeah.
dangerous. So that's where KPIs should be around the entire team, not just for the BDM.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
But also, I don't know.
that is a whole nother
Yeah,
topic, and it is so true what you're
yeah.
saying. And that's where you often get this real disconnect between
Mm,
BDMs and the PM team. That's where you get this
yeah,
conflict. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, there's so many good points. I've written a whole heap down, the agents bit that Jody mentioned before. That sometimes can be a little bit out of our control, but we can do better by charging more, I guess. I don't know, because you want to, as a business, you want to look after your agents as well, and you want to help them.
Yeah,
So that's a fine
absolutely.
balance there. There's
Yeah,
so many things, so many takeaways. So thank you. This was really great.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, guys, at the end of the day, the real cost of bad business isn't just what it costs you today. It's what stops you from building tomorrow. And please don't forget that, because it actually often, like I said, the bad business that we take on today, the
Mm,
side effects of it actually are what happened down the line. But then what happens is, as was just mentioned, then we normalize it. We just accept it. We think we have to work harder. We think we have to do better, and yet we do want to keep doing better. Absolutely, we do. But if we don't have all these structures in place, we absolutely can't get ahead. Thank you so much for having me. I've got some contact details I've put on the screen here. I will share that little working kit with you, Jody. Just give
Thank
me
you.
a day or so to get that to you.
yeah.
That's fine.
If
Can
anyone's
I
got
just
any,
say,
yeah,
I would love, and I love that we can say this. Nadine went through one half of our Zebra portfolio in Frankston, and
Mm.
she increased all the fees.
well
So
done.
I would love Nadine to talk to that just quickly, because she actually found that it wasn't that hard. And hearing the feedback from it was really great. Naz?
When I did that, guys, and a lot of our business owners didn't know we were going to do it, did they? We like one main
Phenomenal.
leader and I I had hope. I had no fear in doing it. I went, I'm going to do it, and it's either going to burn me, or it's going to hurt, or it's going to lift us. So, but I had confidence in the portfolio. So I had confidence in who I was speaking to. I had confidence in my clients, and I know I can do it. So for me, it wasn't a matter of just sending out a letter. I actually made the call to people and I said, look, this is what we're looking at doing. I actually asked them how they felt about it. So I didn't say we were increasing fees. I said, look, this is what we're looking at doing. We haven't increased our fees for the last 8 years. It was a risk, but I think we managed to increase 60 Out of the first portfolio, we had about 150 in there. We managed to increase about 85 of the properties in fees, and they were the ones that we called. So I think we worked out roughly that we increased our income about just over 30,000, was it, Maria? Do you remember from memory?
Yeah, it was close to 30, I think.
Yeah. But
phenomenal.
I had no fear doing it. I just went,
that's because you
if
knew.
we make the call, they're going to say, look, I can't afford it, or I can. So they couldn't say no. That's how I felt, because the communication was there to the clients. They were getting good service from us, and they said, you deserve it. That's fine. Go for it and increase it.
Which is absolutely fantastic. And I love that you said, I didn't have fear, because that is what holds most people back from doing this, because they think that their whole rent roll is going to walk out the door. And that is not what's going to happen at all. And that comes back to that, being able to value ourselves, being able to articulate what it is we do, and, you know, what we do for them, and the value that actually comes with that. And that's what it's all about. So I love hearing that. Good on you. That's amazing. Well done.
But also, Julie, like, I think it was important, the way we did it was different from what everyone else did. So once again, it was different, where everyone else would just send a letter to say your fees are going up in 30 days or whatever.
You called every single person,
which is amazing. And they would respect that as well. Like I said, and there's a lot of people that it's really, really hard to decline, a letter. Having a conversation with someone, you're bringing connection with it as well. So it doesn't make it so transactional, which is absolutely fabulous. Yeah, well done. Really good job.
Thanks for sharing, Nadine.
No worries.
Kelly, love this, and picking up the phone is so powerful for landlords and tenants. Amen, Kelly. Absolutely it is. It's an art that's been a little bit lost, and that needs to come back with increasing the fees. Put them together and it works, Nadine. Absolutely. Well done. So, yeah.
Julie, I just want to say thank you for giving us an hour of your time, or just over. We're so appreciative of what you do for our industry, and the support you give all of the property managers all over Australia every day.
That is absolutely fine. Thank you. And I absolutely love it. It is my heart and soul. It has been for a long time. And like I said, sometimes people don't feel comfortable asking questions, in group scenarios, and I totally get that. But if anyone, wanted to brainstorm something or have a question, please reach out to me. I do spend a lot of time on the road, so you won't get an answer within an hour. I promise you of that. But I certainly will get back to you. So,
Julie, can you again, thank you so much. But we've got quite a few business owners on here today. Can you just give us what is it exactly that your business does? How can someone, if they reach out to you, how can you help them in their business?
Yeah. So basically what I do is, it's very much about those businesses that just feel like, oh my gosh, we just feel stuck and things are just not working. And, what I talked about before, we're so busy, we're working hard and things are not just falling into place. So for me, it is all about going into businesses and looking at, okay, what are you doing? Okay. And there's usually a couple of pillars here. We look at structure. Okay. We look at, who's doing what in the business. We look at processes, workflows, all of those sorts of things, maximizing their software. I find that that's often a really big piece, because often they have software that has really great capabilities and it's not being utilized, or people are adding other softwares in, thinking that they're needing to do that to fill gaps, when in actual fact it's now over systemized, that there's now too many things that people are trying to keep, too many bells and whistles, So for me, it's all about going into businesses and helping them streamline, so that you have actually, it's all about efficiency and consistency. And if you can get both of those things right, it makes an enormous difference. Like I said, cut out that whole thing of people coming in and doing their own thing. True story. I got caught, and this is never a judgment on any business I come into. I don't believe I come in to tell people they're doing things wrong. I hope I can assist them with helping them how to do it better. That's what it's always about. True story, went into a business and they had 3 property managers, and they'd obviously come from other offices and now working there. And they were operating 3 property inspection softwares in their business. You know how you've got
Yes.
your inspection expresses and
Yeah.
your inspection managers,
Yeah.
and some of your softwares do it and all that. They were running 3 different programs in that one department. Can you imagine the chaos of that? I'll let that
Yeah.
land with you. And this is what I'm saying. But again, it's not a judgment. In our businesses, particularly for principals, they've got a lot going on. They've got a lot of balls to keep in the air and trying to keep track of things, etc. So sometimes they do leave things to their own, thinking that it's all under control, but we just can't run businesses like that. There's always got to be a gatekeeper. So
Yeah.
but efficiency and consistency, if you get those things right, it takes away a lot of pain. So yeah.
Thank you, beautiful.
Where you
Thank
come
you
in.
so much.
My pleasure.
That's right.
Lovely to see everyone.
Thank you.
With the
And
screen
thank you
between
everyone for
us.
joining us.
Yeah,
Really
and hope to
appreciate
see you
it.
all in person at some stage somewhere soon.
Definitely.
All righty.
Thanks, Jody.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for
Thanks,
organising this.
everyone.
And thank you, team, for
Thanks,
joining
Jody.
us. See you,
Yep.
everyone.